Hey, well, welcome to the Dream Labs, the Dr. Contrast Live here. I just had to open up here today with a little salutation. Hope all of you had a great Thanksgiving holiday. And I missed a couple of days because of the holiday last week. Pretty busy schedule and so forth. But I just thought we'd pick it up again today and so we get some pieces put together here. And just interesting little journey here today, looking at an illustration here of the B1B Lancer bomber. And I hope on the screen, I just finished up. I started a line drawing, for example, last night. And I just did a little work on it this morning on putting some of the values in, and it'll be a little bit dark on the screen, but it's a lot more subtle, live and in color here. There's a lot of little variations on theme, and the aircraft itself is painted in a very dark gray, metallic military gray. So I had to be very careful with the value structure here, but I just thought I'd show you what the illustration is like. This is for a gift, and I want to make sure that everything's all set. And I got the first one, and I just wanted the pattern set on the first piece here, and then let that become part of the building block for the wingman here on the lower aircraft to the right-hand side here. But I'm going to spend some time today just going through this little illustration set for aircraft. And by the way, I want to make a very interesting, I think, exciting announcement. I love doing aircraft work. I mean, I do a lot of different things, product, architecture, interior space, transportation design, but I do a lot of aircraft work, but I don't show a lot of it on stream and the Twitch system, but I'm starting maybe doing a little bit more of that because it's really intriguing stuff to work with. So anyway, that's one of my great passions is doing aircraft stuff. I've done a lot over the years, and I want to bring it back into the Twitch system and keep it alive here. So, but what I thought I'd take a time today is go back in and get this value structure set and just kind of set the platform, get the busy work out of the way, and then maybe spend some time over the next few days putting some of the background in, like the atmosphere of the cloud and some of the sky tones in the process itself. But I'll be working with the culprit marker on a really good 32-pound bond paper here, and really interesting stuff to work with. It takes marker great, it doesn't stain or bleed, it just holds on to it very nicely. But I'll be working with a real tight palette of just cool grays, number 5, number 6, and number 7, just kind of balancing out some of the tones, getting some of the real subtleties in the bomber systems underneath. Very little highlight up on top, as you notice, because it's also a very flat military gray, so it's a tough one to kind of work with here. So let's get it started. We'll just kind of work with some values here and open up the door with this second guy. We'll just, if I have to shift this around a little bit, so pardon me, just to get the angle right, we'll start putting some stain work in here to get this guy started. Take our time and build it in. Get that to start. Pretty delicate little surfaces here to work with here. I don't want to really flood it too severely. Almost the same value structure from one to the other. Just going to kick that over and into place there. Take this over around that engine nacelle just a bit. Get this wing base in. So if you're familiar with this aircraft, it has a very simple but yet subtle body form here around the cockpit area. The thing comes around, when you leave the wing graft, what's interesting about that, all of a sudden there's a real interesting shape. It kind of has a nice bell form to it, so it really changes character quite a bit. So we can kind of catch this a little bit here for ourselves, bring this into the actual body form itself. Bring it up over the top of that canard, ink that in, and just start building a base here. Let's take this into the body form, a little reflected light underneath this thing. Come back through it, kick back just a bit, a little bit of reflected light into the body form itself, and right on through. Pick that up just a touch. Come right back and just pick the base up underneath there, just enough to give us a little more around that canard. I'm just going to fill in the blanks here. Let's take this right on through. A little bit of reflected light underneath there should do it. So let's get that established. Let's get the far side wing in place. I'll go back and restain this. Notice how it kind of bleeds in a little bit. It just kind of dries up a little bit. But then we'll come back in and pick up this whole piece. So let's get this other side, far side wing in place here. Get this also. Pardon me if I rotate the pad just a bit to get the angle correct here. Lock it in. What's interesting about this view too, if you notice, there's a lot of heavy shadow underneath this. It almost looks like it's evil in a dark black, but it's more of a military gray. And we have an overhead light source that's really kind of making things a little more compound in terms of how to settle all in and what to deal with here as far as the shapes are concerned. So let's kind of get the shadow sides in here. Let's kind of tune this in just a bit more there. Let's get this rear tail canard in place here. And we'll start adding a little more mix of the values here. A little bit of shadow on top of that body form there, near the tail end of this thing. Very delicate run here, just making sure that everything falls into place and not getting too clouded and crowded with some of the values here. Just a lot of shadow. And one more pass to kind of smooth it out a little bit. Take that body form in over the top of that canard just a bit. We'll run underneath it just a touch, and then they're in good shape. Okay, that's that piece in tone here. Let's get that shadow coming off of that tail section here. Let's get that wrapping around here, up in here, comes down, goes in, turns back on itself, and does one of these. So we're right about there. Just inside that engine nacelle. Get that all set up. A little darker up on top there. Just gonna wrinkle that back just a touch. There we are there. Get that started. Now notice there's a little bit of a lighter value in this nacelle side here because there's a little bit more of the reflected light coming up underneath that wing structure. So we'll take that and just kind of lay in a number 5. Come up a scale just a bit here. We're just kind of blank in some of the forms here. Leave a little bit of that highlight where that support method is on the engine nacelle itself. Let's do that. Let's get this in place. Come right through here. Put this first engine piece in just in sequence here. Put the basic body form in first, and we'll start to finesse what the surfaces are doing in it. So we'll come back in through here just a bit. See a little bit of reflected light in there if we can. There it is there. Coming off of this piece here. A little more of that. And that's kind of coming together. Let's get that's the far side here. And let's get the far side of this nacelle in too. There's a little bit, we'll separate this as well as we go through this. Come underneath that little body patch there. We'll save the engine itself. Get this into place. And just a real delicate touch underneath here. Just kind of block this in here. Bring these all together now. Save a little bit of that. Comes out of that where the underbelly is. We'll just put more tone into this thing. It'll dry a little bit lighter, so it's going to be very subtle. Same thing underneath here too. We'll come back in, pick up a little bit of this, just to tone it all in, get the shapes put together here. Then go underneath here. Same light number 5 gray, just take it underneath it, under the body carriage, and just run it right into the body form itself. So there it is, a little bit of reflected light there. And we'll fill that in. Now there's the basic body mass right here. So we're just kind of laying in blocking shape, not really kind of detailing it yet. Hey, how you doing there, Dimitri? How are you? Good to see you, Demetrius. How are you, man? Did you have a good holiday with your family? Very cool. So just to see, Mr. Demetrius was wondering if you use a marker and get darker than you want to, you go back into it with a white. Yeah, I do a white pencil. Yeah, white Prisma or a little bit of pastel. I'm going to do that. This is it's what's coming up on the screen, Demetrius, is a lot darker. I mean, there's a lot more subtlety here, and I think the camera is not picking up some of the subtleties in the form. But yeah, it's a lot lighter than I'm working on here. But the majority, it's a difficult surface to work with. It's almost like a dark military gray. So I've got to be very careful with the balance side of getting it all put together. So I'm just laying in some basic surface work here with Demetrius, and we'll kind of come back in and pick up some of the pieces. Let's kind of get these nacelles in place here. So we'll come back in one more time, that number 6 gray, and we'll just keep toning in this really strong, bold graphic underneath the shape itself. in the shadow areas. Then we'll come back in and we'll separate it and get it all put together. Great observation though, Demetrius. It is a very difficult set of circumstances to deal with, because to begin with is that military, that real strong military flat gray, which is sometimes difficult to illustrate, especially when you've got a camera system like this. It's not picking up some of the subtleties that I'm rendering into the form itself, but it's getting the job done. So when it's all said and done, I'll start adding, like your comment is well taken, I'll start adding some highlight to it, a little bit of tempo, a little bit of white pencil to kind of bring the values up just enough to kind of take it away from being so deep and dark. So a little bit of that, place that the far side canard. Let's go back in through here, just pull that reflection back just a bit, get that body form to work. Let's put a more shadow in this far side of that wing. We'll drop that off, just put it underneath this thing, a little bit more reflected light. Come back in through, get a little more of that separation from one engine cell to the other. And again, same separation here, and the same separation there, just a little bit more subtly. Let's take this guy and get that little shadow. The little shadow comes off the wing onto this engine nacelle. It's going to look like this. It's going to come in and drop down. Let's kind of fill in the blanks here. Go a little deeper, get that insert piece there. Engine nacelle. Air intake, air intake. And we'll come back and detail that in a minute. You know, let's see where that process is coming, what it's going to build toward. Let's do this. Let's kind of fill this in with the actual piece itself. It's going to do. While we're at it, let's get this underbelly put in place here. A real strong, bold graphic. We'll take that right into the body form itself. That'll start to separate the fuselage from the engine system. There's a little bit of a graphic. It's all working on patterns, Demetrius. It's all working on patterns. Let's come back out of this, into this. And a little touch of that. Now let's get this upper piece here is interesting. I'm going to switch, go to a smaller pen. The upper portion of this engine exhaust area is a very strong component. It's black. Down to where that reflection line is. And come up underneath it again with a little bit of secondary, then just a little touch of that underneath here. There it is. Same thing on the far side exhaust area here. Notice how delicate these shapes are. You really have to be very careful to not overbuild it. And so far, what do you think? Is it making sense for you there, Demetrius? Hopefully that's the case. Let's go back in here. Let's go back a little more. Let's go more of this backside. Let's see where I'm at here with this 5. Let's get a little bit of that flat system in here. Let's come back to that fine pen again. You get that little drop shadow in through here up the wing. Take it on in underneath the underbody and get there where the attachment piece is, where that engine nacelle is. So it's there. It comes down on itself here. And I'm going to take just one more pass here to get that shadow to really come underneath this wing here. Number 7 gray. A little bit more separation in some of these forms here. Maybe a little bit of reflected light in there. Take this through the wing graft into the body form itself and return it. And you get this a little more guts underneath this body form here. Just a little more shadow here. A little bit of reflected light underneath. And then get a little shadow off of this thing. Let's kind of put this in place too. We take that guy and just kind of put it right down the wing structure just a little bit, and we'll get a little bit more of that, a little bit more detail in. There we are. Trying to kind of pull this thing together as best we can. Now let's get this upper body. Well, first of all, let's get this shadow back into there. It's just more of this tail section, a little more definition back in through here. And then underneath, a little more underneath. And especially right in through here. This has really been a tough portion right here. This guy is really touchy as far as detail goes, man. There's a lot of subtle little changes of pace in this body form itself, and it's sometimes extremely difficult to read. There's a little bit of cast shadow on that guy, so it's going to bring that on through and do the following here. Let's get that in place. Let's get that little return underneath here. A little more shadow off of that wing form coming off of this guy. Underneath. And that. And hopefully starting to come together there. I mean, it's just really real subtle as you go here. So it's a little more passing through here. Let's just kind of separate these guys just a little bit here. Hey, what do you think there? Demetrius, coming along all right? Cool. Yeah. Let's get this guy put together here. Got shadow, that form, and maybe just a little bit more of that 5 up and through here. I'm going to hold that up just for a second. Let's take this 5, and that's not so bright underneath there. It's more of a really hard shadow there. It kind of tones that back just a bit. There it is. That helps. Now, the real touchy part is to get this guy to read. Let me change pace here. Number 3, cool gray, just get a little more of this little softer touch in the engine itself. There it is. I'll take this guy and just drop a lot more shadow in through here to kind of separate that front wing from the rear wing. Overall, some very delicate, small, simple surfaces here that are really going to begin to dictate what this guy is doing. Very, very delicate, and I think that's the reason I'm just taking my time here as I go through the process here. Let's get this little end of that tail bulb in there so it kind of doesn't look like it's a lonesome ring. There it is, looking good. Now let's take this same shot here. Let's kind of lay in, let's get the upper body form in now. Let's see what happens here with this guy. Before I do that, let's get this radar dome up front. Far side canard there. Little far side canard on this guy. Little wing piece. Let's kind of reinforce this. There's a little bit of a drop in that form as well. That's that. There it is. Let's drop that shadow, that tail form in here. And then be a number 6 gray. Just a little bit of a drop right in through here. That brings it all together. There it is there. Shadow to shadow. All right, now let's get that body form, that upper body form. And this is where it gets really delicate because you have to wash in a real light, start with a real light gray, 5 gray first, just to kind of give it the same overall impact here. See if we can get this guy to kind of romantically just kind of fill in the blanks for us here. Delicately over the top. In the canopy. And just romantically push the shape just enough to give me a little bit more of a and again, back in through here. And lo and behold, we have the majority of this guy in place here. Just very careful. Again, let me get this out of the way. There we are. Let's take that number 6 gray. A little more of that core coming up that cockpit area. And that's what's happening to it up there. Let's go down a notch. Number 7 here. Leave those aside for a moment here. Let's come down a notch and get a little more shadow definition in this underbelly here with these wings, these engine nacelles. Very delicate. A lot of little surface work to work with here. Just really kind of cautiously moving it all in place. Not cautious from the point of view of just not being confident of what we're after here, but just being very careful to not over flood some of the detail we're dealing with here. So let's go back in through here and get a little bit more of this definition through here. More definition underneath here. Sorry for the silence, gang. I'm just kind of going to concentrate on what we have, what we're working with here. A little bit of shadow off of this front canard to get that all set up. There we are. That helps. Let's clean that up just a bit more. There we are. And again, a little bit more of that number 7 cool gray, just to kind of activate that offset here. Right there. So there's basically, let's put a little bit of delicate work in here in that canopy area. Some of those head struts. Now, before I do that, let's do this. Let's get a little bit of this, about a number 5 gray, and just pull this, the radar dome and nose cone in place here. Go back and pick up a little more detail on that. More brush into here just to get that underbelly to work over the top of that real subtle form. Very beautiful how that whole thing comes together. It comes off of this whole upper piece and just drops right back in. Beautiful surface work, but delicate to work with because it's all these really military dark grays. And I don't want to burn it, but nonetheless, what do you think, gang? Come together? Looks like it matches. So far so good. Boy, I tell you, Demetrius, is a real delicate operation because there's so much undershadow on this thing, and it's so deep and as far as the content goes. But the sketch itself, when I'm sitting in front of it, is much lighter than it is on the screen. So hopefully that'll transfer okay for us here. Let me do this, put a little of this back in place here, and get this pen set up. Let's come back in and just finesse some of this thing just a bit. Let's hit these little. While we're at it, a little bit of this, some of that tail ribbon banding put in place here. Let's get this in place here. That's an Elmendorf. And canopy. Let's see, let's put a little bit of this. Let's get this canard kind of dropped out of there a little bit. A little bit of light gray, And I think we're coming pretty close to being home here. I don't want to push it too far. I just want to get the same set of values and circumstances, one aircraft or the other. Let's kind of put this a little bit more distinct here. Let's kind of knock that back just a little bit. Let's get that little offset in the tail canard here. So many small little subtle pieces. It's really kind of tough to kind of guide with as it goes here, but boy, we're getting a good match. I think it's getting very close to what we need to really activate here for what we're after. It's going to go back in and just a touch more of this. And then this. Let's hit that number 5 gray and just kind of fill this blank in here just enough. And there you go. Let's see what happens here. Let's gotta get this guy just one more little pass up on top here. Let's get some of these little pieces and parts put together here. A little bit of that touch system here. Put that in place. And we'll look at that little white dot here. Harvey, again, we got a couple of bits of white pencil here. And we'll do a little detail work on this guy. Just today, you know, the real purpose of today's stream is just to get that second piece kind of blocked in. And I'm going to start finessing some of the work we've got here. Now let's do a little bit more of this. Needs a little bit more of this darker dome up front. There we go. That's more better. Let's go back in there and get a little bit of this canopy area in here. Same kind of setup, a little bit of gray in there to kind of deal with it. Number 5 gray to kind of knock some of that texture out of it. We're very close. There we are. Let's put those two separate here. Let's take that number 3 gray, just a little bit more of a drop in through here. There we go. Now let's see if we can kind of get a little bit of this, a little bit of detailing through here. Now I'm going to work with a little bit more Prisma color here, Demetrius, to get a little bit of that underneath that belly that highlight the work orders here. There we are there. A little bit of separation here. A little bit of separation down below where the nacelles are. Engine intakes, just a little bit more of that. Got that little leading edge in here, comes off of that form. A little bit of a designated body shape there. Come back in and just pick up enough of this stuff here. I'm going to go back to this guy. And just a bit more of that in through this one too. I'll take that back just enough. And one more pass just to get this. Drop the shadow off of that canard here on the upper body. And that should do it. That looks pretty good here, gang. I mean, we're getting some pretty good results here in terms of the basic match from one to the other. I'm going to make sure we just kind of fill it out just a bit more. There we are. That knocks that out just a bit more. Let's take the timer to get some of the refueling character up on top here. And just touch up enough to feel a little bit of detail. And a little bit of highlight here on this guy. Through the nose cone. Coming through the nose cone. And I don't know, that looks like it's coming along pretty nice here as far as stable. Let's do this too. Let's get some of this graphics involved here. Pardon me again for shifting back and forth on these pencil systems. Get the strategic air command or the squadron markings in place here. Let's get a bit of this tail graphic in place here. Very delicate, very small to see, but nonetheless part of the whole package of putting it all together. Let me sharpen the stick just a bit here. Back to the original one here. I'm going to highlight over that. Highlight over that. Let's get this wing glove kind of clarified here. This little portion here is a little more highlight to it that does this. Just a bit right there. It has a little bit of a drop right into there. That comes along into the body graft itself. And there we are. And just a little more highlight right up on top of this guy. Just real soft. I want to really kill it here with a lot of different transparencies here. Let me just kind of move this in a little bit more of this light 3 here. And knock that back just a bit. Take that black pen and detail this tail section canard here. A little bit of a black mask. Oops, wrong weight. Let's get that. Make sure we do the right weight here. And there it is there. And for all intents and purposes, I think we're pretty close to having that thing pretty well set up here. What do you think, Demetrius? You're still on board here, which I really appreciate you taking the time to follow along here. And hope it's been of some substance for you to kind of enjoy peering at it and looking at it, because it's, again, a very delicate set of circumstances here. I was wondering if that was regular copy paper you were drawing it. No, it's not regular copy paper. What it is, I took the line drawing, for example, and I did the line drawing on a 32-pound bond. It's bond paper. Really, really interesting surface to work with here. Demetrius, because it's interesting to work with, because it takes marker very nicely. It doesn't get all gummed up on the certain sequences that you're dealing with, and it doesn't bleed. That's what I love about this 32-pound bond. You can get that at any print store. I think if you're interested in working with it, that's absolutely terrific. 32-pound bond, and when you lay marker on it, as you notice, I can flood it and go back through a lot of different areas here. In fact, I'll show you real quickly here. Let's find that number 6 gray. Nope, 7, is this it? 6, nope, that's 5. Here's my 6. I can go back in one more pass and to begin to smooth out some of the shapes here, Demetrius, by coming back in and just a little more definition. Wonderful. Notice how it goes on nice and smoothly. Doesn't leave a lot of those skid marks you see in some cases when you're dealing with this stuff. It's just great to work with. It just really fills in the blanks nicely. I mean, there's no more shadow in this thing here. Just drop it down just a bit more. There it is. More shadow on the wing here. And that just about concludes what we're after as far as character goes in terms of, notice I'm not going to put a lot of highlight in it, Demetrius, because it's a much more of a military approach. There's a little bit of pastel we can work with up on top there. But I just don't want to destroy the fact that it's much more of an evil looking kind of squadron setup here. 2 machines, 2 bombers going at it here in terms of finding the target, just keeping it that direct. And I think that kind of solves the problem here as far as making sure the tandem works. And what I'm going to do in the interim here is to begin to pick up on certain things like adding a little bit of pastel in the background areas here, get a little bit of sky in place, and begin to build that up just a touch so we kind of put the composition together. And I think what I'd like to do is just save that and let this kind of set up a little bit here, kind of tone in a little bit so I don't muddy up some of the surfaces I've worked with in terms of the detailing and so forth. And just really let it slow down just a bit, tone in, and we'll take it from there. Hey, Demetrius, it's like graphics 3. Is it not 360? It's not. It's not as thin, Demetrius. The 32-pound bond is a lot bolder. Graphics 360 is real light and thin. That's good for some illustration work, but not something like this. So you do a lot of flood work, for example, a lot of heavy saturation and marker, and putting these pieces together, for example, and going from one to the other, and then going layering it from like a 4, 5, or 6. So in this case, I've worked with 5, 6, and 7. On a 360, it'll flood a little bit, and you'll start to bleed just a bit. But in this stuff is great. Again, mark it down. Go to any print shop like an Atlas Blueprint if you've got something down in the Florida area, and ask for a 32-pound bond stock. It's a little heavier, and it's not slick. It's got a little bit of tooth to it, but it's not really like lightning quick. It's just a great surface to work with. When I do final illustration work for gifts or presentation pieces or for client work at all, let me move this up here so we get out of the way. When I use that, I use this stuff all the time. It's just been really great to work with, and it mounts nicely, and it takes pastels beautifully. In fact, I'll give you a little sneak preview here about what might happen with a pastel. I want to really take a moment here, just take the lightest tone we've got, and just come back in and show you what happens with a little bit of pastel, just to kind of show you what, later than just a little bit of this. I'm going to come back in with a little bit of a Weebro pad, and just start to kind of push this piece together here. I'm going to start letting it, just trying to analyze the composition, but I want you to see how really softly this stuff starts to take pastel. And then you can take that same approach. Let me get a stack of paper here. You can take that same approach and come back in through here, Demetrius. Mix it off paper here. Get that Weebro pad and come in and just start adding some really interesting stuff here. What it begins to happen, it changes the paradigm of the actual concept itself. So that's what I'm going to start adding here in the next few days. I'll take that same approach and maybe come in and add a little bit more of this to it and just kind of get a little bit of a character established for what that color system might look like behind us there. So maybe that, and then maybe just a bit more of this to kind of mix in some of the actual cloud pattern, break it up just a bit more. And we're getting pretty close. I mean, there's some pretty interesting stuff here, kind of bring it all together. Does that make sense? There she is. Hey, Doug, how are you, man? How's everything? Doug, boy, it's good to, I'm just really consistent thinking about you over the last few days. And I'm just trying to set up a little conversation here with you guys. And this is a finished piece, very large. I'd say it's about maybe 24 by maybe 12. Just some very simple, let me get rid of some of this stuff here that I don't need. I'm just starting to lay in some very simple graphics here, Doug. Just a little bit of off tone here. I'll take this guy, set up some of the stuff behind the actual machine itself, so I put a little bit of atmosphere in this thing. And then just slowly but surely just bring that across the composition. So what do you think, guys? Hey, good to have you on board, Doug. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I'm back in and have a little more of these some of these little trailers coming through the actual machine itself. And I'll begin to build in some of the shapes. Kind of break this through, break that on through, just kind of giving us some atmosphere. And let's get a little bit of this. Since we're going that route, I don't know if I still got a live action piece here. Simply, I hope I've lost it. Oh yeah, there it is. A little bit of this. Just to blend that in. Take this underneath the other body itself. Just slowly trying to build in a little bit of pastel action in this thing to give it a little bit more atmosphere. What do you think, guys? Gonna make sense for you? There it is there. Just gonna bring this on through on this side, just a little bit of one of the neat things about this too is the fact that you can come back in and just keep massaging it and begin to blend it so it's not all out there. Just enough to kind of give it some real character here. Let's see if we can get a nice little, like a softer gray. I'm going to tone that in just a bit, kind of cool some of this thing off a bit. Grade off just a touch. Get some of the eraser here. Take that same gray through the other side. I'll probably massage this quite a bit to get this thing to read well, because right now I'm just kind of blocking things in to get it started, but I don't want to really commit myself to a really good just a setup here in terms of getting that. There's enough sky in that thing to kind of let it work here. Let me just dust this off just a bit. And what do you think, gentlemen? Coming together all right? And just taking some of this stuff and just a little bit of Weevil pad just to kind of give it some atmosphere. I don't know, guys, what do you think? Worthwhile? Does that kind of hit the paradigm here? Let me smooth this up just a bit here. Let's see what happens here. And let's see, let's get an eraser in this guy and just kind of start to move in some of the actual highlight here. Let's get some of this in place. Use that eraser and really kind of develop some of the shapes here so it's not so ominous looking. And there we are. Let's see what happens here. As I said, I don't think this is going to be final in there at all. I'm just going to start maybe moving through some things here and getting rid of some of the color. Maybe going more of a sky tone and not so animated. Keeping it in there. I don't know. What do you think, guys? Just helping or hindering it? Remember that line, Doug? I don't know. What do you think, guys? That makes sense? Come together all right? I'm going to stop here for a moment, just get your input on this. Does that kind of match what we're after here or not? What do you think? Oops, let's move that over just a touch here. Let's see, Demetrius. Made it pop. Yeah, that's good. I think that helps. You get that to work a little bit. And we'll put some more highlight in here and get rid of some of the obvious. Here, I don't want to get too far into the woods here with this guy. Just enough to kind of give it some character. Soften it off. Soften it off. Kill some of that stuff in between. And probably go back over this a couple of times just to get the right mix of what we're after. But that's not bad. I mean, it's passable. Let's put it that way. I don't know if it's where I want to be in the final go around here. But Doug, if you're still there, Demetrius tuned in on, yeah, made it pop. What do you think, Doug, if you're still around there? Really be very, very helpful. Very wispy. Nice work, play. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, that really helps, Doug. I mean, I'm going to work on this background a little bit more. I'm not really happy that yet. We've got to bring some content, maybe just a touch more of this blue underneath and through here to kind of take some of the curse off of all the weight being up on top. But I want to really kill it with a lot of maybe some more touching through here, just little bits and pieces along the way here, and maybe that will do it. Just kind of softening it all off. That's not bad. That is not bad at all. We can get rid of some of those darker areas up in there. One of the problems with this material is that when you start fussing around with it, it just starts to build up a little bit on you. You don't want to begin to clog it up. You just want to keep it nice and clear. I don't know. I think I'll just have to let that sit for a minute and kind of look at it a little bit and reanalyze what I'm composing here. I'm not really sure. As I said earlier, this is going to be my final go around here. Just kind of knock it down just a bit more. But anyhow, that kind of gives it a nice little, takes some of the, it's still cool in some of the pattern work here, which is interesting. So I don't know. This is might be a bit of a push. And see what happens with this. A little bit of yellow ochre. And just kind of tone it back a bit with a little bit of gray. And get a little bit of this involved too. A bit of warmth in that thing. Yeah, that's better. Now we're starting. Yeah, that helps. Sorry for talking to myself, gang. Sometimes it helps. Just to warm this thing up just a bit. A little bit of yellow ochre and sky tone. There we are. That's kind of neat. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. That'll pass, I think. Very subtle, but hopefully, yeah, that looks much warmer. It just kind of takes a bite off of all the, I don't know if you're with me here, Doug, in the very beginning, but one of the problems with this illustration is such that it was a very military-oriented color scheme. In other words, a very dark gray. Obviously, the flat gray, the B1B commands, but boy, it's such a tough thing to work with because there's not a lot of highlight. In the view I looked at coming from underneath, there's a lot of ground shadow, very little overhead light, and it just kind of really slowed the process down just a bit. And I think the thing that I really want to make sure that you all understand is that the final piece here, it's much lighter than it is on the camera, so there's a lot more subtlety in terms of the body forms. So, but I think overall we've got a pretty good shot at making this thing run here. And notice one last thing here I want to make sure we don't get guilty of here before we sign off. Where am I? No, that was not it. Yeah, this is better. We'll get rid of some of this, just enough. Let's lift this thing up just a bit more. So it's not so static. That's better. There we are. That takes some of the bite off of that continuous. There we are. I'm going to let that go. I don't want to overwork it, but yet hopefully that'll kind of fill in the blank for us here. And one last little body form underneath this. Got a little more tone into here. And that's it. A little shadow reinforcement. And again, same with this guy, one more pass. Well, there we are. There is the B1B Lancer in squadron, 2 different units, 2 specific units rather. And it's going to drop this out just a bit more too. Just a bit too much highlight. There we go. We keep that in shadow. And there we have it. B1B Lancer in combination with, there it is. Simple line drawing, kind of warming up a little bit more with a little bit of that sky tone and yellow, a little bit of ochre in there, and a little bit of that sky blue, and a little bit of lavenders. I think we've got a pretty good composition there, gang. So that'll do it for today, gang. I really want to thank you for taking the time to join forces with me here today. As I said, when I started the program, I worked on the line drawing over the last couple of days, and I just wanted to convert that onto 32-pound bond, knowing full well that I was going to set up a nice marker study. And again, it's a tough one because very much in concert with the fact that you're dealing with a very dark military paint scheme. So it's hard to put a lot of pop and action into it. Excuse me just a moment here. What I will do is maybe come back with a little bit of tempera, and I'll maybe finish up some of the background work and clean that up just a touch. And if we do get that taken care of, I'll be sure to bring it back up on Thursday if we're allowed to stream a little bit, and put it all together and put a little more highlight in this thing and begin to finish it up. Really interesting process here. Very laborious, very, it's taxing in a sense, because if you make the wrong mistake in the value grays, you've lost it. It becomes a burned out tank. You don't want to do that. But I think, again, because of the nature of the beast, it's such a dark paint scheme to begin. It's a flat military gray, and really hard to deal with. So I applied a lot more shadow underneath and very little highlight up on top. But again, thanks so much for joining forces today, gang. And please take a moment and review my website at drcontrast.com. And also, if you have any things you want me to work on or any questions you might have to want to lay out, feel free to drop me a note at jim@drcontrast.com. We're always looking forward to things to work on and a little bit of input and how you feel about certain things. And I'll post this guy up on YouTube to be looked at here. Boy, pardon me, losing my voice. In the next few days or the next few hours, I'll get this posted. And last but not least, I really want to, again, thanks very much, Demetrius. It's good to have you on board. Doug, to have you involved as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Boy, pardon me, I'm losing it here. And last but not least, all the very best to you guys. And as I say, I always tune off with this, and it really makes a big difference for me because I sincerely believe what I mean, and it's stated from my heart. I really want to thank you very, very much for joining forces, and always never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Thanks very much, gang. And again, please drop me a note. Stay tuned. I'm going to try, just a quick announcement, I'm going to try to get back on board on Thursday. I'm not sure what the actual status is going to be as far as timing goes. I'm going to have a late afternoon appointment. If I can go at 2 o'clock, I'll certainly put a little bit of Discord, a note Discord, and on the Discord out there to forewarn you. If not, we'll pick it up next Tuesday. So nonetheless, gang, all the very best. Take care. Have a great day, and dare to be great. Thank you, because you are.